Alright guys, welcome back to the channel, and we're doing a pretty sweet upgrade to our 1976-ish Sunline truck bed camper. And I mentioned when we put the vent in and we wired it that I wanted to do a 12-volt AC because it's always been the plan. We have pets, we don't really want them to overheat, we want to be able to just not worry about them. And we're going to do a lot of boondocking, so no 110. When you're trying to fit everything in the bed of a truck, and the camper takes up most of the truck, I really don't want to carry a generator and gas cans. So 12-volt AC was really important. And the guys at the nice people at Countrymod actually reached out and they said, hey, we have a system that we think would be perfect. And we kind of talked back and forth. I looked at their specs and their specs are amazing. We'll go over them in a little bit. And they said, we'll send you one. Just do a video. Just tell us what you think of it and show how to install it. So yes, they sent me this for free. I don't have to say I like it. I can say this thing's a pile of crap if I want to. We'll see. I'm gonna actually test it. We're gonna put all their specs to the test. So you're gonna get an honest review. I've gone through how to install it. I've looked through the directions. It honestly seems pretty straightforward and simple and kind of nice. Everything's done from inside the camper, but we'll go through that step by step. But so the first impressions on this thing is I looked at the specs, I read the specs, I didn't process them. This thing is a lot bigger than I thought. It is 32 by 32 and then 7 inches tall. I was thinking more of like a traditional camper RV where they're a little taller, a little narrower. So this thing has a pretty big footprint and it looks like most of the footprint is offset to the front. The actual pass-through is in the back. But you know, it is what it is. It weighs 54 pounds according to their spec, which seems about right. It's a little heavy, but it's not terrible, which is good because the roof on that old camper, I mean, it's solid, but it was just never designed to have a bunch of weight up there. It comes with all sorts of little stuff. It comes with a remote with a screen, which is pretty cool. And then here's the little thermostat that's built in. All the hardware, all the trim. This I thought was pretty cool. It actually gives you, I don't know if you can see it, but it's in the manual, but it's also right here, actually gives you all the troubleshooting codes. So it has diagnostics and it'll tell you. Whether you can get parts, I don't know. I haven't looked into that. But we're going to install it and then we're going to test it. And they have some pretty crazy claims on this. And I want to find out if they're real, to be honest. So it says 10,000 BTU. I don't have a way to test that. What I'm going to do is we're going to park that camper in the direct sunlight and we're going through a heat wave. We're going to see mid 90s, so we can really test it. And I just want to see how long it takes to cool. How quickly can it pull it down? Because I think that's really what people care about. That thing's not insulated very well. It's going to be a good test. But the things I really want to test are the power consumption. So this thing has 4 modes. I'll give you the specs on turbo and sleep, which is their highest power and then their lowest power. So in turbo mode, it claims to only pull 750 watts, which is pretty darn impressive. That's not a lot of power for 10,000 BTUs. And they're claiming it's only 60 dB, which is really quiet. We have that, you might be able to see it in the background. We have that new camper that has just a normal 110 camper AC on it. And that thing is loud. It is really loud. We're going to measure that. We're going to compare. So we're going to see if this thing pulls 750. I have a current clamp. We're going to test it when we do our rundown to see how fast it cools. I'm going to measure out and plot the power consumption because they also claim that it ramps down as it needs to. So we're going to see if all that's true. And then on sleep mode, they claim 240 watts, which is darn near nothing. Like that's really low, and 45 dB. So we're going to test all of that and I'll show you, whether it does what they say or not. But I'm really curious. It seems very simple. It seems really solid. FedEx did their best to not get this thing here in one piece. The box was busted open and destroyed, and really there's nothing wrong with it. I don't think I'm missing any pieces, but the first thing I noticed was the wiring is really nice. Like when they put these together, these are actually little bulkhead fuse holders. Everything's nice. The cables are nice. They're nice, high quality. You can feel they're real copper, which you never know with some of the stuff. And this thing's under $1,000. So brushless fan. And I did notice on the fan itself, there's actually some little metal tabs on one of the fan blades. So I believe the fan was actually balanced. So it seems like they've done everything right. We just have to get it down there and It just bolts into a normal 14 by 14 roof vent. If you have a camper with a normal 14 by 14, this should drop right in, and it just goes on top, and it has this foam gasket that you basically glue down, and then this steel bracket comes up from the bottom and sandwiches it, which is really simple. Like I thought this thing was going to be a lot more work. I mean, I haven't put it in, we'll find out, but yeah, it all seems straightforward. I'll show you how to install it, and then we'll run those bunch of tests to see if their claims are really true. I find them kind of hard to believe, honestly, but we'll see. That might be ideal conditions. We're just going to stick it in the sun in North Carolina when it's supposed to be 95 degrees, and we'll see what she does. All right, so here is our subject, a 1976-ish Sunline truck camper. And yeah, we bought this thing because it matches our 67 common swap Ford really, really well. And you know how I said it's great, we're gonna have great weather for testing an AC. Yeah, that's probably about the worst weather for installing an AC. It's 9:30 a.m. and it is 86 degrees already. So I'm gonna apologize now for, I'm probably gonna be pretty sweaty doing this install, but I do have that fan up in there running, so that helps. But yeah, first thing we got to do here is so way up front, that's where I put that 12 volt fan in. That thing is chugging away, you can probably hear it a little bit. And then this vent back here is our standard 14 by 14. We got to get that pulled out because that is where the AC is going to mount up. And I can already see this trim piece here is going to have to get trimmed back. I'm hoping that light clears. I love that light. It's a 12 volt and 110, but we'll see. Let me get that thing out of there. It's just a couple screws. Just comes right out. I'll probably have to scrape some glue off the roof, and then we'll start working on putting the new one in. Okay, so I honestly think getting that off might be the hardest part of this whole thing. The thing was really glued down. They had 3 different types of screws in there. It's probably been repaired over the years, but to get it off, go get one of these multi-tool blades from Harbor Freight. It's made for scraping stuff, and it did really well. You do need to be a little careful because it will actually cut the aluminum, but we'll clean that up. But you got to get all that old stuff off, clean it up, get that thing out, and now we can see how that foam gasket's going to fit, because I think that's the first thing we have to do. Well, that's the gasket. It's simple. Just peel off the tape on the bottom side and it sticks down. I did put some RV roof tape underneath the whole thing. I don't think that's really necessary normally, but I don't know if you can tell, but this roof is pretty warped and it kind of pushes up and down. So when I put the AC on, it should pull it all tight, make it all good, but just for some extra peace of mind in case any of the holes or anything didn't quite get covered by the gasket, I just did that to help seal it. But really, that's it from up here. Now we just need to get that unit all the way up here, set it on, and then everything else actually happens from inside. Okay, you can see I got to lift it up in there. So here's my power wires. I'm guessing these are controls, thermostat or something maybe. But I do want to correct myself. I was wrong. I thought the extra length went to the front, but it doesn't. It actually goes to the back. So it comes back to, I don't know, somewhere in here. The mounting is actually pretty close to the front edge of it. And I can show you that when we go back up top, but it is offset to the rear. So really it just sits down on there and it'll get bolted down. There's actually, you can see it, there's actually really nice metal riv nuts that are seated in here. And that's what's gonna end up pulling it together. But the next thing we need to do is get the ducting in, so we'll go start on that. Okay, I know it says step 1, but everything we did is actually on the pages before this. This is the top unit. We're going to skip that one. We'll go to this one. They can be done in either order. Use M4 self-tapping screws to fix the air outlet to the indoor machine. So what that is, that's the grate here. So we need to put the ductwork in, basically. And remember I said I thought I had everything? I think FedEx did get me. I don't have any self-tapping screws. This is the only box or the only hardware I have. So I do think there was a box that fell out, or a bag or whatever it was. Like I said, the box was torn open and had been retaped shut. So I just went and grabbed some screws. So we'll screw this one in here, just like this. And then this one goes on the upper side. The pictures are pretty good to show you alignment and everything. It's not too bad. So I'll get this one done and then we'll go inside and do that one. Okay, so the next thing we have to do is install these studs. And this part is rather unclear in the directions. So there's two lengths. The short ones are way too short for me. And this is not, I think this is a 3.5-inch roof. So I don't know really what would be thinner than this. But I think these are going to be too long. So I think I'm going to have to cut them off. And then they come with nylocks and they come with these flange washers. So this is how I'm putting them in, is I'm putting it on there. And then if you can see, I'm going to tighten that down. And that's what's going to jam, basically tighten the stud into the AC on top, because that needs to go tight. So that's where these washers, these flange washers, need to go. And then on the bottom, because we don't just crank this down when the bracket goes in here, because we're going to compress this gasket, we're going to compress it a good amount and then tighten them. So those will need to be the washers and the nylocks. But that is, it kind of just says install them. So yeah, I'm going to use the long ones, I'm not using the short ones, and that's how I'm going to put the nuts on. And I think that makes sense. But yeah, there's that duct. I don't really care for how that goes in. It said to just self-tap it in there, and it's self-tapped in tight on the front, but because there's a foam gasket, you can't really see what you're screwing into. And then on the back, there's not much solid there. Once it's in, it won't matter because it'll be wedged. It's kind of crooked a little bit right now, so I'm hoping it goes together. But let me need to tighten these down, and then I think we can get the bracket in. Okay, so brackets in. Again, they don't really tell you how much to tighten these, and I did use the nylock here with the washer. But I went until this is about 3/4 of an inch tall. That feels like it's got good tension on it. It's even. I think that'll be good. And they do have alignment, and this is on the back side of the unit. And there's also one on that thing too that lines everything up. But yeah, I mean, that's really solid. The bracket fits really, really nice. I'm really happy with that. It fits flush. That's tight. I mean, it's not going anywhere. Kind of reinforces the ceiling too. So let's see what the next step is. Well, if you follow the directions, you're going to put that thing on next. And then you would get to the very end and notice that you didn't actually wire it. I didn't do that because I brought that in and I'm like, well, we have to do something with these wires. The directions don't mention it. They show them here on this screen, but nowhere else do they show you. So we have to put power to these. And I think, I mean, they don't come out the bottom. It is nice. I looked at some of the other 12-volt ACs and they actually route them outside. And then you have to do a protrusion through the roof. I really like that this doesn't. I think what I'm going to do here is just route them straight across, go through this header, and then I can drop them out in this cabinet and run them down to my battery bank. So I got to drill some holes, and they do give you a ton of nice cable. So I think that's going to be my easiest. So I don't have to like drop the whole ceiling. I'll just sneak them over and down. But yeah, they don't actually tell you what to do with these. They don't show you any of this stuff, but I assume this is pretty straightforward plug and play. But I'm going to drill some holes in here and then start running my wires. Oh, the wife's not going to be happy. I had to drill some holes. Oh, better have the AC on when I show it to her because I made a mess. I did try. I took that stuff out of the cabinet. All right, let's see if I can snake the wires through here and get them into this cabinet. Okay, so I got these fuses are, I think, 150s. The one on the other end is a 120. So these should never pop. I really think these are just here so they can connect them. But I mounted them just so they're not rattling. Put a little tape just in case that gets close. And then the directions get confusing again. So it says, where does it say here? Split the internal machine parts. That didn't make a lot of sense to me. So you have this piece, and if you look, there's screws. There's 6 screws that were in here. So loosen those 6, and then the back side comes off. And this is what will go up into here. And these wires route down through this little channel here. But I test fit it and it doesn't fit. This side, no problem. What I have on this side is, if you look at these brackets here, they 45 across, and there's actually spots for these, so I don't think I need to cut these. Those actually go down into here, so I think I have room. But that bracket comes across here, and it's hitting the very edge of this and of this. So it doesn't, there's nothing under there that's not doing anything. So I'm gonna 45 these corners back here, just these two on the close side here. So here and here, and that should let it sit flush. We'll see how that goes. There's my modification. That's literally all I did. Take off those two corners with the multi-tool, and I just test fit it. It fits perfect. So I'm gonna put this up in there now. And if you're wondering, it does have an alignment sticker that lines up with the other two. So just get it slotted in here, and then make sure the holes they go through the studs, and it seems like it'll work. Okay, I got it in. So this just screws back on with those 6 screws that you had. And if you look, it's not sitting quite flush because it is actually hitting the bottom of that stud. Only on 2 corners, this corner and this corner. It's not much. I'm gonna take it back apart and I'll trim them down a little bit. On the other 2 sides, there's clearance for them, but these are actually hitting, so I just left it a little bit loose. No big deal, that's easy enough with a little grinder. And then the control panel snaps in. That's pretty straightforward. There's like 5 or 6 connectors. They literally only go one way. It looks like it should have screw holes, but actually it just snaps in. And then I do like, these are permanent stickers on here. I love that that's on there for troubleshooting. So, and then this piece just snaps right in. So I don't know if these are supposed to go in or out. If like these little rubber blocks, they kind of seem like they're blocking it. There's little electric motors. I have to figure that out, but all I gotta do is get power to it and we can see if this thing works. So I got this thing installed and it's running. You probably can't even hear it. And I kept getting an electrical fault, which is nice because it actually tells you what the faults are. And called the company. They gave me a few things to check out. And what we ended up finding out was FedEx got me. They actually broke this control board. So this was packed in a separate box inside the main box. And it's right here, and you can see it got crunched. So FedEx got me there, but they sent me a new control board really quick. That's good. What I didn't check was the remote, because this thing comes with a remote. And if you look there, it's cracked, and they actually cracked the circuit board inside. So even though it looked like it was packaged well, it didn't matter. It still got kind of busted up here. But it's all working now. So now I want to take some tests on this thing. We're going to pull it out. We're going to let this whole camper heat soak, get it nice and hot. And then I want to hook up my current clamp, which I have here. And we're going to data log and see how fast the temperature drops, how much current it uses, and kind of what the whole profile looks like as it's cooling down, as it starts using less power. So I'm gonna get this thing moved out into the sun, because right now we're inside the barn. I want this thing good and hot, and we'll see what it does. And then I'm still gonna take some sound measurements and current measurements on all the different settings. All right, so here's our test rig. 67 Ford, 12 valve Cummins, NV 4500 5-speed, Dana 60 front, 80 rear, lockers, air suspension. It's all dumped, that's why it's sitting so low. And then on top, a 1976-ish Sunline truck bed camper. Don't really have any paperwork on it, 76 or 78. But let me show you the test setup in here. And I don't have a step back here, so I gotta try to not fall. But, all right. So there's a temp sensor, and if that looks like a meat thermometer, it is. So that comes in here to this one, and then I've got one here. So I have indoor and outdoor temp. And that's reading down here. So probe 1 is the indoor temp. So the top one's indoor, the bottom one's outdoor, and then this is going to measure current. The GoPro is going to take a snapshot every 30 seconds, and then I'll be able to data log it. And just to be fair, so nothing is influenced by the batteries, I do have it plugged into AC, so my AC to DC charger is running, so it'll have full power the whole time. The batteries won't affect it. So let's see how fast it can pull this thing down from 88 degrees in bright daylight. Turn this on, go to 21, which is like 70 degrees. We'll set the fan to auto and we'll see what it does. Okay, so the last test we let run for an hour, basically on auto. Now I'm gonna crank it all the way up. It's 87 degrees in here again, and we'll see what it does when it's on turbo. All right, that is turbo all the way up. Let's see what it does. All right, guys, let's geek out a little bit over some data here. So I have two different runs on here. Blue is the snowflake mode and yellow is the turbo mode. So these top two lines are our outdoor ambient temp. So you can see it was around 90 degrees. I think the ambient air temp really was about 90. These spikes over our sun load. It was a partly cloudy day with a little bit of cloud cover, and I think we had some cloud cover here and we had some really bright sunlight here in some of these. So it's a very heavy sun load. The camper is not very well insulated. It was built in the 70s. It just has some loose fiberglass insulation. So the sun load is going to matter here a little bit. These next two lines we have is the indoor air temp. You can see for snowflake mode or normal, we start at about 89 degrees and we eventually get to 75 after 45 minutes. In turbo mode, we start a little bit cooler. It's about 2 degrees cooler, 87 degrees, and it pulls down to 72 eventually. Actually, we hit 71 here. And I did between these, I did the normal snowflake mode, and then I opened the whole camper up. I turned on that exhaust fan to try to pull as much outside air in as I could, and I let it sit for about half hour to try to get everything to normalize back. The green dotted line here is 70 degrees. That's what I had the thermostat set to. At the bottom, we have the results from the current clamp. So this is amps of current that each one is pulling. So if we start up here in normal mode, or snowflake, whatever you want to call it, you can see it after about 10 minutes, we've gone from 89 to 80. So a little less than 1 degree per minute. And it kind of pulls down. And eventually, out here at 30 minutes, we're down to 76 degrees. And it kind of just maintains 76, 75. If we look at turbo mode, though, we start at 2 degrees cooler. So we have to account that in. But this slope right here is steeper than what we saw with the normal or snowflake mode. So to get 10 degrees of difference here, we saw it in 5 minutes, 87 to 77. And it's really not an outlier because in another 5 minutes, we pull down another 2 degrees. So in 10 minutes, we have reached 75 degrees, which it took the normal or snowflake mode almost 40 minutes to reach. So it's significantly faster. And you can see we do get to 71 here. And, it's hard to kind of compare these because these are my measurements just from that dangling air probe, whereas the system is measuring, right inside itself. So it may have thought it was at temperature here. We'll see. And then on the current, you can see that the snowflake mode ramps up and is the turbo mode is very aggressive, which you'd expect. It's strong mode. It's, as they call it, the max power output, but it actually has a lower peak current consumption. Only 43.5 amps is the most we saw. But we saw almost 46 in the snowflake mode. And you can see it runs very high, very strong. And at 10 minutes, when it's down to 75, it starts to ramp down. When we're running right around 40 amps, about 20 minutes, it just bottoms down here, and we're at about 33 amps, which, if you look at normal or snowflake mode, it's running low 40s for almost 40 minutes. And then out here, we see this kind of oscillation where it seems to be cycling on and off between about 35 and 40 amps. So why is it doing this? Why is it pulling less power overall on turbo mode, but it's cooling much faster? What I think this is I think it's an airflow issue. When you put it on turbo mode, you're locked into the max fan speed. And I think it can move enough air to circulate air within the camper to actively cool it down very quickly. I think in normal mode with the fan on the auto setting, I don't think it has enough airflow to really to circulate the air around. So it struggles to cool it down and it struggles to really get down to temperature. So
This to me is run turbo mode. It will cool much quicker. And other than kind of this little spot, it uses a lot less power overall. And it gets much closer to the set point. And I mean, realistically, on a 90-degree day, I did this as a stress test. I set it to 70. You're not really going to set it to 70 on a 90-degree day. 75 is probably more reasonable, which if you look at that, we achieved that in about 7 minutes. So we would have seen a larger current ramp down, instead of maybe 22 minutes, we might have seen it back here at 10 minutes, which is incredibly impressive. This cooling is, I mean, it's a small camper, but like I said, it's not insulated well. This is very impressive. But let's look at this data a little bit differently. So here again, we have our interior temperature starting at 89, getting to 75 on snowflake mode. And on the turbo mode, we started 87, got all the way down to 71. Same graph we saw before, just a little bit expanded so we can see it better. And again, our set point of 70. We have back here is the power consumption. So this is assuming a nominal 13 volts at the battery multiplied by the current readings. And you can see in the beginning here, yellow, it is using more power. So turbo mode uses a lot more power initially. I don't want to say a lot. It uses more power initially, but still we're under 600 watts here. We're maybe hitting 570 across here. And but by about 4 minutes, the normal mode is already exceeding the power consumption, and we're running even through about, I'd say, about 10 minutes or so, and then it starts to really diverge. This is a significant amount of power usage that the snowflake mode is using that turbo is not. And then from about 12 minutes to about 22, they're roughly similar, but still the normal mode is using more power. And then out here, this is a significant power difference. So if you think about the highlighted area is the area under the curve, that's what is coming out of your battery. That is the power that your battery has to supply. So by having this lower graph all the way through, the turbo mode is using less power. So despite it going from 87 to 72, and doing it much faster and keeping the interior much cooler, it is using a lot less power through here. So in my mind, I'm probably not going to use the snowflake or normal or standard mode. The turbo mode is honestly a more efficient mode. It used less power and it achieved a 15-degree delta. Here we got 14, so not quite as much. But if you look, it dropped it out much, much quicker. So this is very impressive to me. And again, we didn't exceed 600 watts in either of these runs. And the turbo mode, it ramps down. They said it would ramp down, and you can see it does. As the temperature comes down, it starts using less power. And you can see out here where I think the normal mode or snowflake mode is struggling with airflow. It's ramping in and out, whereas the turbo mode is much more consistent. Now let's look at some of their other claims. We'll start with the sound level. This is right off their website. So 45 dB on the quietest setting and 60 dB on the loudest. Now I didn't go sleep eco standard. I left it on normal mode and I wanted to know what it would what it would do on the highest and lowest fan settings because I don't think the compressor has a huge input here. But really who cares when the compressor's not running? It's just a fan at that point. So on low, 51 dB, which is pretty close to their eco mode, which is honestly very, very quiet. On the highest fan setting, I got 56 dB, which kind of equates to their standard. So I didn't get 60 and I didn't get 45. I was kind of right in the middle. So I call that a win. I mean, 51 is very quiet. And then we have that 2021 camper that has an Advent 110 camper AC. It's your standard normal camper AC, which that admittedly that thing is loud. I don't like how loud it is. That's 58. So 56 to 58 in dBs is a pretty significant jump. 58 to 51 is like a whole nother world. It's crazy quiet. The noise on this thing is very, very impressive. So I got to give them that. I didn't get 45. Maybe if the compressor's off and it's just a fan, but is that really fair? That's not an AC, but 51 still very impressive. And like I said, all my measurements were taken with the set point about 5 degrees below the interior temperature. I wanted that compressor running. I wanted it trying, which is interesting when we come over here. So in turbo mode, I measured about 585 watts of power consumption or 45 amps. They're saying turbo will pull 750 watts. I have no idea how they're getting that number. I couldn't get that at all. Maybe if I'm putting 14 or 15 watt or volts in, maybe it starts to climb there, but I'm just not seeing that. You're not going to pull that kind of power. So this is very impressive power consumption for, for how fast it cools. If we go to snowflake mode, 494. So yeah, it's a little bit less than turbo, 38 amps instead of 35. They're saying 680 watts. I'm getting 494. I don't know why I'm measuring lower than what they're showing, but I mean, I measured it right off the current clamp. And again, I don't really know the point of this mode. It kind of seems pointless. Just run turbo. I think I'm going to switch between turbo and eco mode, during the day. Use turbo to get it down to temp and then switch to eco mode to kind of get it to maintain because that's a solid 10 amps less. And this is again when it's trying to pull the temperature down. And then night mode, 26 amps and 338 watts is pretty darn efficient. Yeah, it's not 240 like they're claiming, which 240 seemed about impossible to me. And again, maybe if it's like 1 or 2 degrees off of set temp and it's only trying to maintain, maybe it'd be 240, but realistically, I'm saying 338. But knowing it is going to cycle on and off realistically overnight, so you wouldn't have a constant 338, watt pull. But again, these are very impressive. I'm not getting the numbers they're showing, but these are real world numbers on a vehicle with a current clamp. So I trust my numbers more than theirs. I don't really know what you got to do to get it to pull 750 watts. I mean, I thought I had it maxed out, and for all of these, I just cranked it up. So it's a little interesting to me, but I'm honestly really impressed with all these. 51 to 56 dB. That's really impressive, and it's not maxed out over 585 watts. Like I'm really impressed. It's not quite what they claim, not 45 dB, not 240 watts, but it's still a very impressive system. And I was getting outlet temps on the unit itself of about 55 degrees, which with a 90-degree ambient air temp is very impressive. This thing has a lot of capability and it is very, very efficient. It's more efficient than I expected it to be. It's very quiet. Honestly, I think it's a little bit louder outside. I was going to try to take a noise measurement outside, but apparently all my neighbors decided they want to mow the grass at the exact 2 days that I was testing this. So I did not get an outside measurement. It's not bad. I think it is just a little bit louder than what it is inside. But overall, this thing is very impressive. But turbo mode is that's the one I think I'm going to use. That one and eco. Snowflake mode was not that impressive. But overall, this thing does really, really well.
All right, guys, I showed you the install. We went through the data, we looked at the performance, and really, I mean, all I need to do is tell you what my overall impressions are. And obviously, the packaging could be better. We had some broken pieces. Whether that's Countrymod's fault or FedEx, you can argue that. But really, that's the only complaint I have on it. The install was really simple. The directions aren't the most detailed, but if you watch the video, it's easy. It's not hard. You can figure it out or just copy exactly what I did. And the performance, I'm honestly really happy. It doesn't use near as much power as they claim, and it cools really quickly. I actually just ran a test for something else that you'll see in a different video with running it in the sun with the door open, just max power to see what it would do. And it cooled it down in there with the door open. Like, it's very impressive how well this thing cools, and it doesn't use a whole ton of power. Like, I think real world, it's going to use a little bit of power right when we turn it on, and then I think it's just going to use a low amount of power. And because it's only pulling 45 amps, I have that 50 to 50 DC controller on here. So what I'm going to do is about a half hour out from wherever we're going, I'm going to turn it on. I'll use the remote. I'll turn it on from inside the cab. We'll show up with the camper all cooled down and a fully charged battery, because the truck can put more than, it can put 50 amps in, so it can put more than that AC is pulling. So honestly, I'm really happy with it. We'll see how it does long term. So come back in a few months or so, and we're gonna take this thing out. We're gonna use it. I'll tell you what it's like in the real world. But so far, I'm really impressed. I'm more impressed than I expected, to be honest. So I'll put a link down in the description to the exact one that I bought, and you can go check it out, see if you like it. But I'm really impressed. We'll see how it does long term.